Right, hello and welcome to this week's angling vlog. Today you join me on the banks of the River Ribble, and it might be a super short session this week. We had quite a windy day yesterday when I had the pike match, and we had a bit of rain but not too much. But overnight the rains arrived and the river, it says on the chart it's fallen, but I think the chart tells a few lies, because the river in front of me is getting faster all the time, as you can see. So we'll be really quick. Tactics for today are going to be down this inside line here, just off the, literally just off where you'd be standing. I did a recent video on this peg when it was at normal level, and I'll put a link at the top of the screen so you can compare the two. But there was certainly people sat beneath water level over there. I think I was stood on a tuft there. So we're going to try and go down this inside line where the water isn't as fast as it is out there, and hopefully the fish will move over. So feeding wise, being really positive. I want to try and get them fish on this line as soon as possible. Feeding big pouches of hemp like that is all going to attract the fish onto this line, and we've got to do it as soon as possible. Getting them fish onto this line is the most important thing, to get a few bites before the river becomes unfishable. There is one good thing about a rising river: the fish feel it rise, and sometimes the fish will come heavy on the feed, but they'll only go to a certain point. They'll have a cut-off point where they stop feeding. You know, your fish like your barbel have a higher threshold where they continue to feed, but your dace and your roach, they'll go hard on the feed to a certain point, and then it just gets too much, I think. One of the beauties of the new editing software, it's certainly saving me getting soaked today going up the bank to show you the setup. The setup for the session is my 17-foot Preston Innovations rod, my Shimano Techian reel. I've got a 3-gram bolo, and that is down to a 2.5-gram Dinsmore Olivet, and I've used Dinsmore shots to balance the flow, to add the extra shot to get the float just right. And I've got 2 number 6 droppers down the line. I would normally use number 8s, but I need that extra weight today to keep that bait in them bottom layers. So that's the setup for the session, and yep, that editing software has saved me getting soaked. So right down the back of the swim, just hooked into my first fish of the day, and it took me by surprise because I've been trotting for about half an hour. It's a nice little dace. Let's get him in and take a look. And there we go, the first fish of the day, a little small dace, and hard worked for, I can tell you that. Been about half an hour of trotting through the line and feeding, but hopefully, like I've said before, where there's one, hopefully there's more. So feeding upstream of the peg, probably the only time really you would do it, to make sure that the bait is down on the bottom for the run, and just keeping no more than a rod length out, and just inching the bait through the swim. And that's why I've picked the bolo. It's not really the depth of a bolo swim, it's more the weight of the float and being able to just inch the bait through the swim. And there we go, you know, allowing you to just work that bait through the swim, but deep down in the water, so you've got the weight of the Olivet keeping your bait down in the water and picking up 1 or 2 of these dace. So like with the chub video, it's all about patience and confidence that, you know, the fish are going to arrive. As I've said with this River Ribble, there's a huge head of fish in it, and you've just got to hope that they moved over. As you can see there, the fish I've come onto that line of maggots now and getting steady bites, and it might be that we need to move the hemp further up because that fish was right up the swim. But the most important thing is you keep feeding. You've got to keep that line of food going down the swim to keep that shoal there, because they'll soon move once the bait stops. And obviously maggots, and more importantly today the hemp, will keep them there. You can see they're just inching the float through the swim. It just gives them fish longer to pick up the bait, because your Olivet on your follow is making sure that when you hold back, it's only your hook link that's coming up in the water. Your actual bait is still down, and you've got to fish heavy enough to control the river, not the river be in control of you. For example, if you were fishing like a 6 number 4 today and you held back, because it's light, your line would almost be straight in the water and there'd be nowhere near where the fish are feeding. And so there's a good few days now in the swim, it looks like. So anyone who's been keeping up with the blogs recently, when I was talking about fishing this river or big rivers in general and splitting them, you know, into lanes, and today it is really simple. Literally, if you split the river into 3 lanes like a motorway, you've got the fast lane, the middle lane and the slow lane. And the river literally today is that. The far lane is fast and going through really quickly, so you wouldn't fish over there. The middle lane today has also become the fast lane. As you can see, it's all one, so you are just concentrating on the slow lane as it is. And obviously the faster the river gets out there, the more the traffic will move into the slower lane, and it makes it really easy. Today you're just concentrating on the inside lane under the rod tip, and what it means is you can really fish in right behind your float, so you can hold back all the way down and really hold that float hard over that hemp seed. You can see there the fish just coming no more than a rod length from the bank. But one thing I do want to say at this point is, when you're going to fish a river when it's got extra water on it, the dangers are higher. The banks are a lot wetter, and you've got to be sensible about the swim that you choose to fish. Like I said before, I'd fished this swim before, and I'll put a link again at the top of the screen to that blog, and I think I was stood down here. Now the river at my feet that day was about 2 foot deep, you know, maybe 1 to 2 foot deep. I certainly could have stood in it in weight, you know, in my wellies and fished it. So I know today that if I was to fall in down here, you know, hopefully it never happens. It hasn't happened so far with me fishing on the rivers, but I could just stand up and get out the river, and that is really important when you're fishing a river that's rising and the banks are really wet. Try not to move around your peg a lot. As you can see down there, it's quite muddy, but I've stayed in this area and not moved around the peg, because that just creates more mud and makes the banks worse. But yeah, you've always got to be thinking about your safety and picking the right swim, you know, with your safety in mind, because no fish is worth potentially dying for. So yeah, be sensible about it if you're going to go out and try it. And one thing that has been today so far is a great average stamp of the fish. They're not the big, obviously 10 to a pound dace that you can get, that we've had in recent vlogs on here, but they are, you know, a good average stamp. And it is literally at the moment, for now, a bite of chuck for these days, and they are a good quality too. They're all in that, you know, 3 to 4 ounce bracket, I would think. So feeding maggots today as bait has been important, but by far this bait has been essential. The hemp seed is heavier than the maggots, So what it'll do, it'll sink quicker on the bottom, and the river will move it slower across the bottom. And what this will do, this will hold the dace in the swim. So although I'm feeding 2 or 3 to 6 maggots every trot through, I'm putting a big pouch of hemp in every other cast, because it's getting washed away all the time, but it's holding the fish in the swim while you can catch them on the maggot. And hemp seed is one of them baits that when I'm without it on the river, it's just, you feel like you're not prepared. It is one of them baits that I don't go the river without. It's a fantastic bait. And there's another dace just coming over that bed of hemp seed. And I get all my hemp from Cheshire Particle ready made, so it comes prepared. And I really do think the days of, you know, buying raw hemp and cooking it yourself are really gone now. The quality that you can buy freshly prepared, and the quality it retains once it's been frozen, like I do, and reuse it on the sessions. You know, you haven't got the missus moaning about you using a favourite pan or stinking the house out on a Friday night. So yeah, as always, I put a link in the bottom to the Cheshire Particle page, and that's where I get all my hemp seed from. And I'm not going to lie here, when we arrived on the river this morning, obviously the first year on it I didn't know a lot about its limits, but I did have my doubts about whether we would catch, and I certainly didn't think we'd have as many bites as we've had. You know, it is getting to the stage where it is a bite a chuck at the moment, and what I'm looking out for is the bites basically dying. As I said, the harder the river gets and the higher it gets over there, the more the fish will move over. And I'm actually getting the fish probably up to a third sometimes across the river. So it says to me that they are quite a way off that point. And it has been fantastic fishing, it really has. And again, the car park was empty this morning when we arrived, and there's nobody else on the bank. And some would say, look at the weather, that's the reason why. But when you're underneath the brolly, do you know what I mean? And it, like you've seen there, it is a bite a chuck. And you know, just come out, try it. As long as you're prepared for the weather with your thermals and your brolly, you can have a good day's fishing. And I say, it might not last all day, but already I'd go home a happy man with what we've caught already. So just hooked into probably the best fish of the day, I would say. Does feel a better fish. And I am really sorry if a lot of this video has got, you know, rain noise on it, but there's not a lot I can do. It's absolutely bucketing down, and I'm sure if I can put up with it for a few hours fishing, then I guess it's not so bad for you guys watching a few minutes of a video. And regular watchers of the channel, you've probably guessed by now, this is raw, you know, raw fishing. It's not, you know, it's fishing as it is, isn't it, this channel? You know, it's raw. And today, this is exactly what the fishing was like. It was, you know, the brolly blowing in the wind and catching dace a chuck, and it's about as real as it gets. So let's take a look at this dace. And to all them people watching who are thinking you must be mad, probably am, but at least in my madness I'm never alone. And there's my uncle up there, equally as mad, equally as passionate about his fishing, and he's getting a bite of chuck as well. Fantastic stuff. And that's what I love about dace, and why they're my favourite fish. They're like your best friend, they're ever reliable. They feed in nearly all conditions. It can be freezing cold and you can still catch them. And like I say, they are like your best friend. They're always reliable. One of the questions that I get on the blog a lot is from people who ask how to approach rivers that they've never fished for the first time. And hopefully this Ribble experience that we've had this year, it's the first time I've really fished the river, shows you how I go about it. You've got to fish them in all conditions to know what their limits are. Like today, this river is probably not far from its limit of, you know, fishing afloat, or certainly will be as the day goes on. But you learn that today, we've learned that at this level you can come and get a few bites. So as you can see, the weather's taking a real turn for the worst. It's just horrible. There's the only word I can describe it as. I'm dry because I'm underneath me brolly, but that looks like it's about to take off at any moment. The bites have really dried up a bit, and as you can see, that's hailstone and snow and whatever else coming down now. Matt from Fanta Fishing, I need a hug or rescuing, one or the other. Bring biscuits. All of a sudden the rain has just stopped and I can actually hear myself think. Yeah, it's been an absolutely fantastic, 3 or 4 hours fishing there where we've had Dace. And I do apologise that obviously there will be undoubtedly a lot of noise from the rain on this video, and but that is what the channel's about. It's real raw fishing. It's today I was out in the rain, battering down, windy, snowing, but catching dace on a river that's rising. What we are going to do, we are going to call it a day though at 12 o'clock. They are due 50 to 70 mile an hour winds this afternoon, and I really don't fancy being on the bank in that. It was bad enough before and they weren't them type of wind. So, and we have got a fair walk back to the car park. So what we're going to do, we're going to give it till midday and then call it a day and head off home. But yeah, it has been an enjoyable day on the bank, and it sounds stupid to say that, but it has been. And there we go, another nice dace coming, and the swim is really building in quality towards the end of the session. That's a lovely dace, that. And there we go, what a lovely dace to finish the session on. Let's take a look at that final net and see how we've done. Right on last knock into the session, just hooked into probably the best fish of the session. Proper bending the rod. I don't know what it is, but we'll try and see if we can get it in and have a look. But it does feel a very good fish. And there we go. If that's not reward for getting out there in all conditions and suffering them this morning, I don't know what is. I know we said that last fish was the last one, but what a fish to end the session on. Let's take a look at that final net. There we go, there's the final net of fish. Plenty of bites, some quality dace and that lovely roach. An enjoyable morning on the bank. Not the best conditions in the world, but enjoyable. Thank you very much for watching. Tight lines in your own fishing, and I'll catch you all next time. Tight lines.